All right, everybody, away we go. Welcome to today's call. It is Friday, my favorite day of the week, May 4th of 2018, and this is the TRC sales training call that I'm always excited to do. We have had a lot of interesting calls on this Friday training session, and I want to harken back to the one last week and just give kudos to my crew up in Ottawa who did a really good job. Very proud of them for leaning in and challenging themselves, because look, if you've heard me speak and teach for even 2 minutes, you know that I want to get better myself every minute of every day, and I put that upon anybody who's in my circle. This is about getting better. And I wasn't always good at taking constructive criticism myself, so I'm extremely empathetic when I'm giving it to you and trying to challenge paradigms, and it comes across as a little bit painful sometimes. And I appreciate that you sit there and you listen and you consider it. I wish I had had less intellectual insecurity myself early on in my career, because I would have done a lot more listening and reacting quickly and going out and trying these things. Now, having been in this business and the coaching end of it for a long time, I have this incredible benefit of listening to multiple people and their challenges, and that accelerates my ability to make distinctions and give advice that might at first seem like, maybe not something that is, something that you're really going to lean in on quickly and accept, but just consider it. And what I would ask is that it's better to imitate than innovate, is something that was taught to me. So when you hear some advice here, go out and try it. And then if that doesn't work, the good news is then it's on me, and it's on the coaching and teaching and guidance that we have here. And I like that, because what it means is we test something. Nobody has perfect advice. Nobody has perfect insight. Nobody's ever going to deliver a formulaic approach perfectly. And that's why the endeavor to always be coached and trained is something that we have to admit is going to be part of life, and you always have to be the student. So again, long-winded way of saying thank you to those that participate actively on these calls and are willing to get their paradigm and their thought process roughed up. And my goal and my objective is to help you change the way that you see things by thinking. I think that there's too much industrialized thinking in the world, meaning what? Meaning we're all marching in one order, thinking the same way without challenging it. That means our thought process has been industrialized. And one endeavor that the TRC is founded upon is simply making you think. It's not making you think our way. It is just simply to make you think and be a great observer of those circumstances you find yourself in a sales context. Because the truth be told, we do certain things based on intuition and our internal guidance that either work or they don't. What I want you to do is observe that. And what I want to offer to you and share with you all the time is a strategy so you don't get lost and you begin to slowly but surely eliminate some obvious things that trip you into being the problem, okay? We want to eliminate ourselves in a sales context as being the problem. So there are some core foundational human interacting behavior patterns that we think will really help, okay? So I think that's important to recognize, and I want to mention that early and often, all right? So remember, when I open up the microphones, I'm looking for participation here. If there are people that I do always say, hey, be there with your team, and I'll go right after it. So if I've said that to you this week and you're here, I'll go right to you. But I only have an hour, so I want to get right to it. So when I open up the mics, you can speak up, and we can go right at it, whatever is on your mind. But the beats that I like to hit here is that from the inside to the outside sale, this is all about this conversion process where somebody comes into us through marketing, which is a pre-sales moment, into a true human interactive sales moment that is really morphed and changed in the digital age to include how you type what you want to say, how you email, how you text, how you voice broadcast. There's all sorts of ways to communicate these days that have changed. So we want to consider all of them on a sales training call. All right? So here we go. We are interactive. If you have a loud mic, I'm going to have to *6 you. So please remember, *6, mute your microphone. If you're on a speaker with your team, turn it down. That's all you have to do. All right, who's up? Anybody want to jump right into the hot seat here with me today?
Danny.
Yeah, who's that? Pablo?
Pablo.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. want to say hi.
Yeah, good. Hey, Paul, why don't you give us, I mean, it wouldn't be a bad idea for you to weigh in here with us a little bit, because you are having, and I know you want to talk to me about a big epiphany. I don't know whether this forum is, appropriate or not. If it is, wonderful. If it's not, wonderful. But one of the things that you've come to recognize, you are by far and away, and I've been with you now in a coaching context a long time, and certainly a friendship for a long time, but you're having a huge morph from understanding the way that this business works as a wildly successful sales guy, both inside and out. What is the biggest part of your thinking brain that has awakened recently, and what is it telling you to do differently? I guess that's kind of an awkward way to ask you that question, but you know where I'm going with it. So tell me what your thoughts are on all that.
Diminishing returns on online lead gen platforms, going back to sort of a more touchy-feely Mike Ferry approach, hyper-personal interaction with the past client database and the sphere of influence, lots of gift cards and, upcoming client events and surveys about, hey, do you like, sports events? Do you prefer movie tickets? Do you like restaurant gift cards? Going back and getting everybody's birthdays and just home anniversary cards, home sale cards, home purchase cards. I mean, it kind of just goes on, and it's kind of morphing into like it's completely a different way for me to approach my business. I'm staring at what I'm sure my spouse loves, a stack of a box of cards, different thank you cards. I mean, huge box that takes up 2 feet of my desk, and paper clips, and that's going back really, really old school. And I mean, we're still doing the lead gen. I just talked to Patrick today about, hey, get on the Indeed ad this morning and put in there the fact that we're willing to give our agents hot new leads, internet leads, because we are, and we actually don't have enough agents to take them. So there's a really good approach for an Indeed ad. Indeed, for those people who don't know, it's a online platform to attract sales agents. So that's really my big epiphany. No, that's not the thing. I want to talk about that in private, by the way, that other thing. But,
sure.
But that's kind of been the thing that we're doing really, really differently this year, and it's going to take some time to sow the seeds, but I think that at the end of the year we're going to be very, very happy that we, kind of made that turn in our business. Yeah,
I'm going to, Laura, as usual, is sitting a few feet from me off camera here, and I'm going to let her weigh in on this as well, because I think it's important that you hear from her as well, because she's expert at this as you are and has dedicated 12 years of her life to this body of work, and she's giving you sort of the head bob positive, I agree. So what are you thinking, Laura? What's on your mind?
I just love everything you just said. I mean, it's when you put out to the universe that you're thankful and you're, reaching out to people on such a deep and personal level, it's undoubtable that it will come back to you in return somewhere along the way. Yeah. And there's no better people to market to than people that you've already had success with. Yeah. And that are already your fans and know how you do business. I just think it's genius, and I, as we discussed at our team meeting, I'm so almost like frustrated with us that we haven't been doing this for years. Yeah,
Paul, that's
we have, but we haven't either.
Right.
I mean, no, I know. It's just like duh.
It's just terrible.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. There's some very strong feelings on this side of it. And let me just go back and reiterate a couple of points for those of you that just came in. What's on the table here is I asked Paul Cantu, who's been with me, and obviously Laura has been with me for a long time, in coaching context and business context. And what we're recognizing is that I guess what's old is new again. That the internet, to a certain extent, has pushed the relationship further away, if anything, and especially when it comes to lead gen. By the way, Paul, I think you misspoke in what you were trying to say. You said touchy-feely and you referenced Mike Ferry. I think you probably meant Brian Buffini, if I'm correct.
Brian Buffini. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Exactly. All good. Exactly. All good. I just want to be clear, because we've had people, look, these are coaches and names in the business that I respect, and I grew up in this business recognizing their body of work, let alone my mentor, Proctor. I think the challenge there is, and this is where I differentiate myself, and I want to weigh in on this, is that I don't think any one of them is singularly right. I think if somebody holds camp and says it's all about a touchy-feely relationship-based approach, or somebody goes, no, it's not, it's about picking up the phone and pounding away and cold calling, I don't think that either one can say that absolutely and be right. What I believe is that I like to get up above the whole business. And what I see is those that make a lot of phone calls and they use dialers and they attack a big batch of names, they're definitely going to get conversations, scripts, because not necessarily because they're the best that they could be, but just because they're being said. How about just that they're being said and nobody else is saying anything? So oftentimes we get deluded into thinking that just because something's being said, it's the most effective thing, and we get painted in. And you heard that last week where the paradigm is, well, I've always done this and it works for me. And I jumped on that paradigm only to say, yes, you're right. Picking up the phone, following some scripted performance, yes, it'll yield a result. But you're wrong to say the way that you're saying, because it shuts down your open-mindedness, which is why you're frustrated, I'm frustrated, Paul's frustrated, to the extent that we're inspirationally dissatisfied. That when you learn and you learn and you learn and you learn, you have these moments of clarity and a new lane in your brain opens up. Because the brain can only see this business in a limited capacity. Otherwise, what happens? You get overwhelmed. And you get stuck. How many people, Timmy Kerrigan's online here today, watching, and that was my exact one-on-one coaching with him this week, was try to resist the urge to feel overwhelmed by picking one task to complete that's moving you in the direction of your new understanding of the business, right? It's like, for example, in the mastermind call, when we open up a big file like we did the other day, for all you mastermind members, you can go, download the X-Mind that we put up there. But the point is, when you look at it, you could get overwhelmed. You could get really mad, beyond frustrated, and say, why didn't I do this? Why am I? And beat yourself up and get paralyzed. Whereas I think what we should do is when we learn something and there's a new epiphany, we should get excited. It should be that thing that says, oh, this is so great because I know that I'm not doing something exactly the best way. And I think there's a better way that I can try. And the great news is I can get off a coaching call. I can move in another direction. And I can instantaneously and immediately get out there and try it and see if it really yields that result. But I would say that if you really look at this as a manager first and say, how are you managing your sales process? There's definitely the place where you're just not going to duck. And we trained this at the Griffin Realty Group yesterday. You're not going to duck sitting down and making phone calls. As you and I discussed with the expired stuff, you're not going to duck. They're not going to go away as an opportunity to pick up the phone and just make that call. Because most people are not making that call. And even those that are, we don't think are taking the same approach that we are. So we can't just say, oh, you know what? Let's just keep the mailer going. And let's handwrite a letter and send a Starbucks card and thank them for their time for considering our stuff. Yes, that's a great evolution, but it doesn't eliminate the need for the call, the text, the phone call, the follow-up, all the aggressive quote-unquote stuff, right?
It's just a matter of layers.
Correct.
And I think Paul's, that layer of doing business is one we've been missing, and I think that it will change. It will change things, but I think it'll also change how we feel about the job.
Yeah,
right. It's such more gratifying.
Well, that's very interesting you say that. Did you catch that, Paul, and everybody else? It changes the way we feel about the job. Timmy Kerrigan, too, that was kind of like where we were at over the last month or so. If you get exasperated, and a lot of my one-on-one students come from a heavy lead generation pitch and understanding, and that's what it was. But really, when you saw Proctor's business as an example, I was able to see into it. It had all facets to it. Even if it didn't, if it wasn't weighted towards a touchy-feely, it still had some of that in there. There was still something going out to past clients. Hey guys, live mics. There was still something going out to past clients and having that communicative thing. But I still would say this, to your point, it's a much more interesting place to work and be in this business if you are connected to the humanistic side of it. Would you both agree with that?
For sure.
I do. I really do. And I'll just allude to the text that I sent you last night or the night before. I'm going through these. I'm getting these tasks every day in Infusionsoft. Send happy anniversary purchase cards, send happy anniversary sold cards, and it was shocking to me because I have had agents, OSAs that have worked with me on my team for years, and I'm literally going through people from 14, 13, 15, 16, 17 that sold or bought or sold through us, and I was actually ashamed of myself because I didn't even recognize the name. And I'm like, I have no connection with this person, even though they were kind enough to entrust my business, albeit with one of my OSAs. Entrust my office with the biggest financial transaction in life, and I don't even know their name.
Yeah.
And it was it made me so mad at myself. And I was like, what I need to do from now on, going forward, is I need to make sure that client either they get brought to the office so I can introduce myself personally as the owner of the company, and maybe even be there when we give them their closing gift in person, so that when that OSA, if that OSA does leave, moves back to Florida, or hopefully not, but goes to another agency, that client still has a connection with me as the face of Cantu Group Real Estate. And so now I've got so much damage control to do, just going backward and trying to reestablish a relationship with someone that I was too arrogant to even take 5 minutes of my time to meet and shake their hand and congratulate them on the purchase of their home. It's frustrating as hell.
Well, here's where I think the arrogance gets bred, though. I think the arrogance gets bred in the business model. Okay? I think the decision, the starting point for all of us is, what type of a business are we? Right? Really, really looking at this. And again, I'm going to say I'm happy to balance all of it, because I train people that are trained to be very aggressive cold callers. I train people that have come out of, a much softer approach that's a referral-based business. But I don't know most top producers that don't have a very heavily weighted referral-based business. Why? Because you've just done such a good systematic job for people that they really appreciate you, and they come back to you and they refer you. So why is that always a shock to people? I don't know. But that's quite frankly, a great byproduct. But can you imagine if you started with that true end in mind? And what I've always said, and I've been preaching this now for about 2-3 years, the Griffin Realty Group really morphed itself thanks to the slap in the face that the digital age combined with the recession brought me, was this wake-up call, Paul, that the business model that we follow when we just are concerned about the latest, greatest way to get a name and convert that name, and I call it, skimming the cream. If you're just so focused on that, I'm not so sure you have the bandwidth to pick your head up and recognize when they go along, because you're such an industrialized thinker on the assembly line. It's Gerber's trap that he talks about for all of us, that when you get down as the technician selling, and you need to sell more to make ends meet, you get hyper-focused on the business model being heavily weighted towards the front end, which is lead acquisition and conversion thereof. So it's the business model understanding. But if we would all, as salespeople, just take a breath and say, if I want to be in anything for the long run, it's going to be predicated on the reputation that I create. Not so much, see, we're always marketing. Well, what's your reputation out in the marketplace? Well, everybody defaults to a marketing conversation. But over time, your reputation in your marketplace is built by how you treated the people that came in contact with your business, and especially those that came to a conclusion. You can do, here's the painful part for all salespeople. You can do a tremendous job taking care of somebody, and you can pass them off to your closing department, and you can become disconnected from them. And they can become disconnected from you and think, oh, he was really nice up until I went under agreement. And then he didn't really care. And I was really anxious. I didn't know how to get the moving company. The closing department was just okay. So it can actually get worse. It's not arrogance. It's abdication of responsibility. And it's because we see the end as salespeople. Whether you admit it or not, you do. You see the end as a salesperson the minute it goes under agreement. You hear it all the time. Oh, I got another one in escrow. As if like it's done. We put another one under agreement today. As if it's done. And it's not even close to done when it comes to the conversion of the deep relationship potential that arrives at the past client. And for all you mastermind members and your team and anybody listening in here today, we're birthing them not only through closing. I'm not even just saying go sit there and be intimately involved in the relationship part. You don't have to be involved in the technical part. If you have a great closing coordinator, wonderful. But that's the most heightened emotional piece of the transaction that they're going through. And they want to know that you're still right there. And they probably appreciate you far more in that moment that you took care of them when it really is, helter-skelter versus when you actually went through and searched and they don't get it. But once it's real and their money's real and the mover's real and all this is coming, they really are judging you there. And that will tell you how they arrive into your past client community, which becomes the foundation of your sales machine. Your number one, I always said this, once I finally understood it and I built the TRC model for you all to see. If you move from a marketing module to a conversion module, sure, that's the 1-2 punch. But then how much responsibility you still maintain at closing so that you can birth them into past client is everything. So see, money for salespeople is a necessity. We spend it, money, time, and effort to get in contact with people that we know or don't know, to get it back in, and hopefully the stuff that comes back in is a lot higher than what went out. That's the profitable, mentality. And yes, without profit, you're dead. However, if you understand how the business works as salespeople, you should be killing yourself to birth really super happy relationships into your past client community, and your communication from the minute it closes to forever, right? To death do us, until death do us part, right? Until death do us part. We are married in this context forever. Forever. And I'm not saying that everybody has to like you, but your responsibility remains. And it's the same thing as a lead. If you're continuing to follow up as part of your sales machine with these past clients, and again, a lot of people say, well, what do you say to them? I don't believe that you're calling up and you're playing the puppy jumping up and down the leg. It's me again. Do you have anybody for me? I think it's still in that context of relationship and responsibility. Hey, it's me. Want to check in? Happy birthday. Happy home anniversary. Hey, by the way, are you getting the market update? Here's the market updates are coming. You're not going to believe this, but I was just down the street and this market's really struggling. So when you sold was actually a good time, or vice versa. You bought and things are up. It's great to see, right? Whatever it is, it's still that caring. And as long as you're caring, I think the sale is a byproduct of that. Anybody want to weigh in on this? Because this is a really important sales subject. Let me hear from some of my other members that are on the call today. Hi, go ahead.
When I do the 7-point strategic plan with my agents and also the 6-point strategic plan, I say the closing is the beginning. You're absolutely right about that.
Yeah.
And that to be able to be in contact with them, leave a message, let them know that you're there for them. So being able to have raving fans, so we talk about how do you get that, because you go the extra mile. You don't do just the needed things. You'll do what extra you can to make them know that you really care about them, especially going towards the closing, that you're doing those fine details and responding to them. And that's really what makes raving fans. And then they'll come back to you and they'll refer people, even without you asking. But I always ask now and again, by the way, and then they'll come back to you and they'll refer people, even without you asking. Your business, because I think I would like to have, a big percentage of them being referrals, but never to forget that we always still tell them about our 7-point strategic plan and our 6-point strategic plan, so that they're educated and they know what we're going to be doing. So I think what you're saying is 1,000 times right.
Yeah, me too.
And
you've
great. Yeah. To do business.
Yeah, you've always been good at that, though. I think and again, guys lean in on this one. The ladies are tremendous natural nurturers. That's just the nature. right? I almost said the nature of the beast, but if I said that, you'd all kill me, right? So yeah, Laura especially. So the point is, the nature of a woman, I believe, on average, is to nurture. And even the folks that I train currently that have been trained very, very vigorously in this very aggressive cold calling way will readily admit that the nurture, and in fact, those top trainers, that's the word that they use. Your nurtures, yet nobody wants to talk about what do you do with them. I do. And I think that when you nurture people, I'm going to tell you that we find, Laura and I, that over the years, sure, we scrape our cream. There's no doubt about it. In fact, I was covering for one of my agents this morning. We have a listing. It's a good location. Somebody wants to see it. I go out for him. He's in the hospital. Teamwork, and we go out there and we have a good opportunity not to sell this guy the house, but to begin to build a relationship of trust, to educate him on the area, to talk about the house that I sold around the corner, to talk about the beach, to talk about the analysis that we'd be willing to share with him, to go into that nurture immediately. Not to see this as, oh, this guy likes this, let's just go get an offer. Yeah, what do you want to offer? It's so easy and subtle to skip over the concept in sales of nurturing. It's more of a mindset that sets you up. And Gail, I really like what you just said, because when I'm coaching all of you in the mastermind to this extent, where I'm saying, look, start with the end in mind that produces, in our context, a happy griffin. We want you to cross the finish line as a happy griffin. In fact, we're even looking at, Paul, you'll appreciate this, we're looking at the type of gift we've been giving, because we became so oriented towards being a great assembly line and babysitting. We even lost touch with the personalization of the gift, and it became a Visa gift card. And that's just like coming to the end and saying, here's some money back. And if that's the case, it's minuscule amounts of money back. So it actually almost borders on an insult versus a gift. So when you start to see the business...
Oh, I agree with you 100%.
Go ahead, come on.
I was giving away
$50
gift cards, and they just bought an $18,000. I made $18,000 off this guy, and I'm giving him a $50 gift card. I'm a schmuck,
100%. And that's what perspective is if you start from the back. I want to highlight what Gail said. So what Gail brought in here is that the way that you nurture this properly, as far as our philosophy in this group is concerned, is to embrace all of the teachers out there who have, well, not all of them, but all of the good ones who have made a long career teaching a piece of the business. Those that have taught referral-based and pop-bys and hellos and all that stuff. There's a good list of the top several of those. Stumpf birthed Buffini, who did a great job with it. Those are the two that come to mind. On the cold call side, I can't help but think of Ferry, because he coached Proctor, who in turn coached me. And Willie Miranda and I, my good friend, were always talking about the melding of all this stuff into one entire process. But the whole thing is that when you say that, now you have to have a strategic formulaic assembly line built, which is an ugly word. And it is the antithesis of nurture concept. But the truth be told, let's think about children, because I've got plenty of those and I have plenty of experience there, right? When you consider the nurture of a child, don't think for 1 second that it's not strategically organized if you're going to get it right. It has to be built in a disciplined way to do things. Otherwise, it is chaos. So if you imagine that these contacts that you're dealing with are like children, babies even, go to the extreme that you need to nurture them, you're not going to just overdo it. Too much love is the wrong thing. Too little love is the wrong thing. So I think when you look at it, Gail's right. We have, as managers of a sales business, how do we market that sale technique or that sale process we will put them through? Then when they're in it, how do we put them through it? And then similarly, the closing process is just an extension of it, and then it continues at past client. Those are managed modules to consider. Now, in the context of those, when you really have the opportunity to, nurture somebody, the home seller course and the home buyer course and those infographics chunked up, is how you don't lose your way as a good nurturer. But what Gail said just struck me. I'm imagining myself sitting down with a seller especially and looking at the infographic, which I always do, and saying, look, let's start with the end in mind here. A happy closing. To actually give this presentation backwards is the idea you just gave me. And instead of just saying that this is how we get there, but to walk backwards, which will help a lot of you that are afraid to talk about pricing it right up front, right? But to say, look, let's just get connected to the closing, right? You want to go to where? New Mexico? Great. And you want to be there by when? Great. Now, when that day comes, because it will, are we prepared for closing properly? In other words, have you considered moving? Are you working with an agent in New Mexico? By the way, I'm referencing New Mexico. It's a real deal we have going on right now. Like, have you spoken to that agent? Where are you at with all of that? Because what's going to happen is, once during this closing process we have an offer, there's a 10-day window where we'll know if we have a real deal or not based on the product. The next thing will be a purchase and sales agreement, and you're basically beginning to pack and move. And then to move back to negotiation and how we arrive at that. Gail, that's an interesting perspective you just gave me. It's easier to do it in this context to say to all of you, produce a happy past client and work backwards. I think it would be a little bit like of a brain adjustment for me to work backwards there. But if you're talking to them about their outcome, that they want to be happy at the closing and how to get there and working backwards, brilliant. Brilliant. I don't know if you do that. Do you do that, or were you just suggesting that?
Danny?
Yeah, Gail, go ahead.
What do you mean?
Yeah, when you give a presentation, let's say the infographic were in front of you, would you go pricing, conditions, staging that way, or would you go closing, negotiation, communication, marketing? Would you go that?
What I'm saying is when I'm training people and it's really something. I just thought about this myself, Danny. When I get to the closing, I tell them that we have a timeline and all that. I'm saying this is just the beginning of our relationship. I just was thinking of this. This closing is the beginning of our relationship because I'm going to be there for you.
Yeah.
I used to say I'm your realtor for life. So basically, what I'm saying is that is the beginning of the relationship. Although you had one during the transaction, now you're developing the relationship maybe on a higher level where you're going to give them something on their birthday. And so you're really, what you're doing is solidifying that relationship. And the way people have relationships is that they contact one another. They communicate some way or another. Sometimes, I know I haven't talked to maybe my best friend for 6 months or something, but when we do, it still has that, feeling of closeness. And that's what that's what I'm going to explain now when I do the closing module. I'm going to say that's the beginning of our relationship because once you get into the house or once you sell your home and you're into your new home, I want to find out how you're doing. If there's anything that I can help you with, I'm going to be sending you market updates. So that's a whole nother spin on it, Danny. Did you hear just what I said?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just like powerful.
Yeah, it is very powerful.
So that they know that, I love that. I mean, that's just an epiphany, maybe just like Paul got. I mean, this is just another level of creating those raving fans. Because if we have raving fans, we go that extra mile. Yeah. We do what most people won't do, and we're there for them when most people won't be there for them.
Yeah.
They're going to remember that, and they'll have a good taste in their mouth, and every time they talk to you, they're going to go, "Oh, hi, Gail," or "Yeah, you know what, I just loved what happened when you sold my house," or "I just loved when we bought that property," and the minute there was something wrong, you were there right for me after the close of escrow. So
Well, Laura,
beginning, Danny.
Yeah, and Laura. Here's the good news about this approach to sales too. Starting with the end in mind as a happy past client is your end, right?
Right.
And I say past client, you get it. I don't even like to use the word past now. That's how quickly I'm thinking about this because I called it a past client community, right?
Yeah.
But I think we should call it the satisfied customer community, right? Because that's the last module.
Advocate.
Yeah, right. Right. Sure. Any role you want to play, Dean. But you're both right. But here's the point I wanted to make.
Just the word saying past makes it sound like they're not going to be around anymore.
Correct. That's why I didn't like it all of a sudden as you're saying this.
Yeah,
but here's the crazy thing about this, and you and Dean are both in here as mastermind members talking. So and Paul. So what I'd say to this is, the thing that strikes me is what Laura and I were talking about today, and that is the low cost of this stuff versus the extraordinary expense that it takes to go deeper off into the wilderness to find people that you don't know first. I'm not saying that that's not still a part of our business. We debated it today in a healthy way. I challenged her and I said, what do you think about me stopping all internet-based lead gen on the buy side? And then we sat there for a minute. We thought, no, we still do a good job. We still find our people, and we still find the right kind of, new people to do business with. So it wasn't that, but it was more so me thinking about the expenditure of money, yes, but time and effort and waiting.
Oh my God, the time.
Right.
It's unbelievable, Danny. The
right.
time that you spend. And you did such an excellent job for us on our CRM and Infusionsoft, where, when it prompts us to check to see what they're doing, email them. I mean, that time, Danny, can you equate that to the possibility that online leads need to be like maybe 5% of your business? I don't know.
Well, that's right. No, but you would be right. You would be right. And Joe O'Connor's on the Facebook group here today. I've done an enormous amount of work over the years with the O'Connors trying to leverage technology and human behavior. If there's anybody that's sort of moving in a direction of embracing an artificial intelligence approach, it's the O'Connors in Wisconsin, because they have to sell a lot of units to do the revenue. And so those guys have done a brilliant job, but they're also seeing this light. And I know, Joe, you can't talk because you're more on the Facebook group, but Joe, Jerry, and Tommy, they're all excited like we were that the very first thing that we did, and it's not as personalized as Paul's taken the group to another level, but just to send out a past client newsletter that answers the curiosity and doesn't leave somebody hanging, how's the market? Like, we were responsible for these people in an intense way to teach them the market, teach them how to buy or sell in that market. We were intense financial advisors that moment, and then we never again show up to show how's the market. Laura's shaking her head. My hands are thrown up in the air. But we're doing it, and we've been doing it long enough now where, we're getting some really nice feedback from people. I just got one the other day from a gal by the name of Linda. Hey, we get your stuff, by the way. And it was just the way she said it. And I didn't talk to her, but it was the way that she said it in the email and the engagement that took place.
And that's not even personal.
I know, that's the thing. I know. Yeah, it's not even personal. It's just staying in front of them. And now to go in and personalize the home anniversary and send us, do you know what a pack of brownies from Zen Direct or Send Out Cards costs? I mean, $5, $6 mailed, like Paul said. Imagine looking at this and saying, and again, Paul, we didn't make the 18,000, so let's in full transparency say we have to whack that up with all our expenses, etc. However, to your point, you do look to the closing and say, I need to reinvest this in this relationship. So not only am I going to give you a closing gift, but I'm going to stay invested in your cards, your gifts going forward, really forever, so that we're there.
I'd be interested to hear, and I don't know if this is the right time, but some people's closing gifts for buyers and sellers, because I kind of feel like they should be different.
Yeah, well, I think it's a sales context. I think it's a fair question. Who gives away past client gifts in this group? Anybody?
Or closing gifts.
Closing gifts. How far do you take this concept at the moment?
I do. I do.
Go ahead.
What is your? Oh, I have to unmute.
Yeah. What do you give?
Well, sometimes I give them a big gift basket. That's my latest. Depending on who they are, they might get a really nice bottle of wine. But I personally give it to them.
And what's in your gift basket?
That's what I do.
What's in your gift basket? Sean Hummel, hang on, I'm coming to you next too.
Gift basket is full of all kinds of stuff: cheese, crackers, chocolates, pears. I love the one where it's a lot of fruit. If they have kids, they get a really big fruit basket because people love that for their kids.
Yeah, you know what's
So
in.
I mix it up depending on the people, so it's more personalized. So I can't just say I regimentally send this one thing.
Yeah. Kerrigan's posting a funny post. He says, haha, no, I'm the worst. No gift, nothing. Just a call. We close. Congrats. Right, Timmy? Yeah, it's the dudes. The dudes are the worst, right, TK? Right? So I think, let me go to Sean. Sean Hummel, I know you're in the group too, because I can see the Quebec phone number. You had a little bit of an echo, so I'm going to open up your mic so you can tell us here too. Go ahead, brother. Tell me. What do you give Sean?
Well, what I do is I give them a coupon to a restaurant to get them set up in the community.
Yeah, good.
I think that goes far.
Yeah. And you have
making them feel like a local really quick.
Oh, I like that.
Is something I try to do.
That's very smart. That's a smart concept.
And then they appreciate and remember, and then I hand off that relationship to a restaurateur. I make the call, concierge, make sure they're well taken care of.
I love it. That's, but say it. Yeah, that is excellent, isn't it? Because I like the language he used. I make them feel like a local. Quickly, give me the line you used again, because it was very good language.
Well, I make them feel like a local.
Yeah.
I introduce them to the local community.
Yeah. And if you know, Sean's new to the mastermind too, by the way. So mastermind members, you'll get to know Sean. He's a successful agent in a very resort-like place in Quebec, a ski area type of resort. So feeling like a local would really matter there. Now let me ask the other side of the coin. What about those sellers, Sean, that are moving away? Any alternative thought process for them?
I don't want them to sell, honestly.
Yeah.
Because those people are the ones that are the happiest up here and refer me a lot of business.
Yeah, but what about
obviously?
What about your sellers that leave?
Sorry.
What about your sellers that sell and then leave the area?
Those clients, I'll send them a note once in a while because they continue to refer me business.
Yeah. I just meant as a closing gift. I definitely keep them on How's the Market type of mailer because you're right. They still know people. That's a big problem too with this community of past client sales. We tend to think that when somebody moves out of town, it's as if the relationship's over. Those people still have a piece of their heart in that location, right? Unless they're moving because of tragedy or something like that. But they still have family and friends, and you know it's still extremely important. But Sean, I'm going to hang on to that. I make them feel like a local because that's a hyper local play too. So I really like that. And then to make a call and make sure that there's a concierge, that's a greeting. Really good. I'm digging that a lot. Who else does something like Sean and Gail?
We were doing Canty Group knives for a while.
You were doing knives? Why'd you stop?
We were doing high-end knives, yeah.
Why'd you stop?
We just, it was super expensive, and we just kind of, we ran out of knives, and we were kind of in a tough spot, so we never ordered another huge batch of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And see, well, there's the deal. It is a money management issue too. That's where I was going next, was to say, I think, and mastermind members, you'll get the reference because of yesterday's call where I was saying, that 5% off the top is the pre-profit, starting with the end in mind when you have your team set up, group set up, brokerage set up. This is the same way. It's as if, like, the minute that thing closes, no matter how much money we're behind on our bills, it's almost like you have to have a separate account for this, right? And at one point in time, I had set up separate accounts. And of course, nobody ends up managing their business with that kind of discipline. So it didn't follow. But the truth be told, major corporations are very fully aware of exactly how they break down their money. And that's why they're able to, like, I think Alan Smith was telling me that he's working for Berkshire Hathaway and they know exactly the amount of money per sale that they make. And so that formulaic approach, I think that when you get to the end of it, if you were to cull out that piece for that continued deal and put it in a gift account, and you knew what those gifts cost ahead of hand, let's just say it's almost like an investment account for that relationship. Let's say that for the next 8 years anyway, that you set aside X. Because what I was going to ask and I forgot to ask Sean, and I forgot to ask Gail, what were you spending? Like, in other words, how much is that gift certificate?
8 years, anyway.
Sean?
What I was going to ask, and I forgot to ask Sean.
Sean, I've got a little echo. Sorry, bud. Go ahead, Sean, go ahead. You good?
How much is that gift?
Sorry, I got a little weird delay on his phone.
John?
Okay, well, I'll skip that. Gail, tell me, how much do you spend on that?
$50 to $100.
Okay, which is in the exact range. And you. Let's tell everybody you hunt elephant, so your small closings are $1 million, right? But yet it's plenty when it's a gift.
It, like a $50 gift card.
Everybody
seems
loves
small.
a gift. It doesn't have
But, like,
to be
you put
lavish.
$50 into a gift
You know, I mean, it's the thought behind it, right?
Yeah.
So, although, you know, my husband did draperies for Joe Montana, and he bought this place up in Calistoga, and we went up there, and we shared some brandy. I guess the brandy was like $500 for the brandy, but so I guess, well, he bought the place in Calistoga for like, I don't know, $10 million. So if I had a $10 million sale, I'd buy a $500 bottle worth of brandy.
Sure.
That's what I do.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and that's really personalization, and it's a joke. It's a tiny fraction of what's happening. You know, here's the problem.
Because I do have a $4 million sale, and I will do something special for them. I just don't know yet. I kind of let my creative imagination go through it. I know that you're supposed to maybe have a idea of what you're going to do, but I look at the people and I make a decision about what I want to do.
I don't think you have to have it. I don't think you have to have the exact idea as much as you should have a budget committed to that you're comfortable spending per transaction. Because I'm also not going to lose my business brain and suggest you all go wild with this, because it is the thought that definitely counts. I can tell you when I had my birthday back in March, somebody thought well enough to go in to send out cards and send me brownies, and put a picture of me in the card that was funny, and it was not lost on me that took an extra beat, right? And I can remember it like it's yesterday. And it's not how much it costs. It's just that somebody actually took an extra couple of minutes to think about me and personalize it about me. And I just think it's a huge sales deal. Now, look, this doesn't have to be, the sales call doesn't have to be stuck on just this past client stuff, albeit that's critical. I think what it should also do is focus on the entire process, because this is the idea of gift giving. And here we go again. It's the concept of, are you truly giving a personalized gift of service, not just a physical gift? Like, we can go all the way to the beginning with this and say, when you're trying to sell yourself to an expired, a FSBO, or a probate, for example, or somebody at an open house, what did you give them that was thoughtful about where they're at in that moment? This is where I think a lot of this, we saw it on the calls last week that we listened to the recordings, is that the critique was, well, wait, you weren't listening. You just weren't listening. You weren't cognizant. I'll never forget working in the venture capital business and going out with one of these guys that was supposedly, had his stuff together. I'm not so sure he heard a word the other person said. He just kept talking at him. And there was never a volley back and forth. So it's really just, and again, when I'm in a teaching mode, I do a lot of talking, but when I'm in a business mode and trying to build relationship, Laura will tell you, I'm hoping that they will read their mind out loud for me, because I'm asking good provocative questions to figure out what's important to them, and then give the gift of insight even, let alone the gift of a closing gift. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. I have a good example.
Go ahead, Leslie. Go ahead.
This is Leslie.
Yeah, go ahead.
Some of the investors I used to work with, one of the things they would do is they would they would give a safe as a gift. I mean, if they were rehabbing the house, they would actually build the safe into the master closet. And I don't know how much safes go for these days, but I thought that was kind of a unique gift.
Yeah. Well, you know what I'm just thinking? I think things that interrupt the pattern, See, where I started the call today was all this industrialized thinking, so that we get on a call like this, and we're hoping for something that we can plug and play into a business model, which clearly I'll give you for the rest of my career, as long as you're listening. I will give you plug and play stuff. But it's never intended to stop your creative mind. In fact, it's meant to be a foundation for you so that you can indeed be creative. You know what the mastermind's like, right? I mean, when we come up with an idea for Past Client Newsletter, and then somebody like Will Daly, he just took a variation of it. Patrick and Paul put their face in there. So, that creative variation is great as long as the foundation is strategic. But you just made me think that's a pattern interrupt. If the builder's giving away a safe, hey, welcome, you probably never thought of this. I'm going to give you a safe. That's one thing most people would love to have, but most would never go out and buy. How about that? So that's a pattern interrupt gift that really gives a lot of thought and creativity to this, which I love it. I think that's brilliant, really smart. So there's where creativity, again, like you said, I don't know how much a safe costs these days, but if they were builders, and in the context of this multi-hundreds of thousands of dollars project they put together, and they go out and buy a $500 safe, right? Is it really that much money? It's like it's putting the fuzzy dice on the car. So I'll tell you that story. I got a buddy who's in the car. Yeah, I got a buddy who's in the car business. Hang on. I have a buddy who's in the car business. And so I got this car from them at one point in time. And I forget, it wasn't a fancy car, whatever it was. But the minute I arrived, I saw the fuzzy dice hanging, from the window. And it was a gift. It was a thank you. It was a funny thing because that's my relationship with him. And it was brilliant. I drove around with them for months hanging from the mirror because I just loved it. It was a pattern interrupt to, keep life connected and keep life fun. It wasn't just, yep, here's your car, thanks. We armor-alled the tires, right? Armor-alling the tires is like giving you a $50 cash gift certificate, right? It's nice, but that's not thoughtful, right? So I can make the case, give the 50 and a fruit basket, right? Hey, we don't know what you like, but yeah, everybody likes fruit, but here's something you can personalize. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to interject because it kind of sounds like everybody's thinking of ways that they personally can give a gift. And granted, budget is the most important thing for us, but I think the key thing is really talking to the client and finding out what their interests are. Yeah. We could drive ourselves mad going, okay, do they want this cutting board? Do they want, a basket of fruit?
For sure.
What do they want? But if you just ask them and find out what their interests are,
yes,
making that gift super personal to them, I think would go miles above what you actually spend on them.
No doubt. Agreed. I have no argument with that. In fact, what I'm trying to do at the mastermind level, and we talked about it yesterday, is make that part of that cognizance of that process. Meaning that if we arrive in this closing process and then we're crossing over, we should know by then. There should have been surveys sent out, and bravo, Patrick, Paul, for sending out a survey. These guys put together a survey monkey, and they sent it out to their past clients, and they said, look, we've done a lousy job of keeping in touch with you. This is, in essence, our message in the bottle, and we'll be sending you more gifts and things. What would you prefer? And the surprise to them was it actually goes back, and by the way, Sean, I see that you have your hand raised here, so I'm ready for you next. But like Sean, all of a sudden he's sending out a gift certificate to a restaurant, and making them part of the local community. Brilliant. And that's what most people said they wanted. So the concept of surveying them individually is absolutely spot on, Lisa. I couldn't agree more. Sean, go ahead. Get your hand up there. I wanted to hear what you had to say there.
Yeah, thanks. So my best gift I ever was able to put together didn't actually cost me any money.
Yeah.
But it cost me a lot of time. I had made 10 baskets. I went on to all the preferred businesses in town and asked them for a really good gift certificate. And I said, look, for the new homeowner that I have, I'm going to send you a new client. And they gave me free suppers, a free car wash,
awesome,
free ski tune-up, all these services that I did, a free cleaning service. And I introduced them. And that's the way I introduced a new client to all these businesses. That, I can tell you, was the best closing gifts I ever did.
Yeah.
But it doesn't cost you anything. It costs you your time.
Yeah.
However, every owner of that business refers me business now and talks me up.
I was just going to say, when you and I do our warm-up call next week, I want to dive into that because I have some ideas on where to take that, but I'm not gonna hijack the rest of this call to get your technical details. But I think there's some things there that you could absolutely do to systematize that and take it even deeper because it's brilliant. I just your whole concept of taking this hyper local. This is the first great idea that I've seen versus this concept of social media, trying to get on social media and just become randomly an interviewer of the community. You have context here, which makes it even better. You have a happy past client that you're assimilating into the local community and being a giver to the other business owners too. Brilliant. Bravo, dude. Standing ovation. That's just a great effort. And I think there's things you and I could talk about to make sure that that's really happens every time, not once upon a time. And that's what you learn hanging around with me, is that I love great ideas to be memorialized, continued, and then continued to be improved. So that's a fabulous hyper-local concept. Good for you, man. Bravo. All right, listen, I've got a little bit more time here. Let me just throw this out to the table. The biggest sales challenge you're having right now is what? And anybody can grab onto that and jump in here with me. The biggest sales challenge, and by the way, guys and gals online, I can see if you post a question there too. I'll take one and answer it there too. The biggest sales challenge, you'd love to dive into what? It's funny, it's the deer in the headlights question, isn't it? Yeah.
Come on, True Group, who's on here?
Yeah.
I'm going to see you at a meeting in an hour. Come on, who's on here? Wow.
I would say higher end listings.
Okay.
Yeah, Andy, hang on. Andrew, hang on. Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah.
Lisa, go ahead, and then Andrew.
Yeah, just higher end listings.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And Andrew, what's yours? I'll hit them both. I'll go a little OT here today. Go ahead. What is?
Mine is dealing with out-of-state buyers.
Awesome.
And
Brilliant.
getting them, their time frames and how to adjust them.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, let's start with you, Lisa. Tell me the context of the higher end listings. Where? Getting them, in the first conversation. What is on your mind there specifically?
Yeah, it just kind of feels like it's really hard to break into the higher end, more luxury home listings.
Yeah. In what context? Meaning, when you pick up the phone, you're getting rejected? What is your experience other than what you believe that's telling you that? That's what I'm after. I'm not trying to ask a better question.
I think it's trying to just even get the appointment to get in front of them to talk to them, because it seems like, as I'm prospecting, the majority of them already know an agent. And even though I can try to say, well, look, before you sign that lengthy contract, I'd like to show you another strategy. I'd like to send you our 7-point strategic plan and talk to them about these different things. But it kind of seems like it's falling on deaf ears.
Yeah. First of all, I'm empathetic. I've been doing it for 20 years now, and it doesn't mean that somebody's going to let me into their $5 million house very easily. Because as you move up the ladder, you're right. Perception becomes a bigger part of the marketing of yourself and your services. And so when you're breaking into that piece of the business, what you're going to find is that the perception about resume is going to lock on a lot of that business. However, it couldn't be further from the truth at high end. See, let me explain what I mean by that. I see a lot of high-end agents or agencies get business because they have this name that's affiliated with luxury, or because they've been doing it for a long time. They've tipped to a certain extent to a default part of the conversation. Okay? Let's just say a couple of them always get invited because of perception. And at the higher end, it's more pronounced that higher end owners want to choose the person that they believe gives them the best opportunity to win. That's what they want to do. Not that that's not true across the board. I think all sellers need to be convinced that you are, and your brand is, the number one spot to go because you give them the best chance to win. That's my experience speaking. That's ultimately what I feel any seller wants. So I find that high-end sellers are easier for other companies to fool. Okay? Think about that for a second. Some of these higher end owners are big time business owners, very successful people in their own right and in their own lane. and then their brain kind of falls out of their scalp when it comes to making this massive financial decision, because they don't know about our business what they don't know. So they default even easier than people, and this is my experience speaking, they default even easier than people at more of an average price range. So what you have to do is perhaps lean in even a little bit more aggressively. But you have to come in with logic, I find, okay? There has to be logic, but it has to be aggressive. And I was taught, I remember Craig Proctor saying to one of the agents, Frank Paulsonello, that he was recruiting, saying to him, I'm sure, Frank, that you're not closed-minded to the point where you wouldn't meet with me. That's a pretty strong trigger, right? That's a pretty strong trigger, because you got them backed into a corner at that point, like considering that they're dumb. So it's a double-edged sword. You can piss somebody off and they can go away, right? Pretty easily. So you have to own the way you're going to say what in essence is what I just said. I'm not saying that same language, but what I am saying is saying, look, it sounds like you know a lot of people and you perceive that they do well. And I'm not going to argue. Sally has a great resume, but I don't know what her plan looks like. And I know that mine is digital age ready. So all I'm asking for is the opportunity to have a little FaceTime with you to present my digital age ready luxury plan for you. And I'm sure you're open-minded enough to hear a second opinion. That's it. Because truth be told, Lisa, that is the logic hammer in full force and effect. Like, honestly, if given the challenge like that, isn't it hard for any of us not to at least consider it? Right? Now, a lot of people don't want to be sold, and they will really default quickly to comfort. So you might just continue to find that until you can crack the code at luxury. But they're definitely going to be open to hear you talk about a plan that's digital age ready, because here's the opportunity. A lot of these top-end agents are not digital age ready, and they can't talk their way out of a digital wet paper bag, I find. So you need to pay attention to learning what is it that really happens in the digital age. Look, transparently speaking, the concept of syndication marketing has changed what we do. The statistics reveal to you the truth that even me or any great listing agent does not double end any more than a tiny fraction of their listings, because you would have to have some extraordinarily private marketplace that you could market into the direct avatar that was better than MLS. Look at Zillow's struggle tried to take on MLS. Okay? It is not easy to create a marketplace that's as powerful as the multiple listing service. So the point is, you have to explain that to them. To say, look, I know all these other high-end brokers are telling you that it's their agents and their agency and they all this. Well, then tell them to bring you the result that shows that, because that would mean that they're beating the market. You know that crappy claim that all these money managers make? We beat the market all the time. Nah. Not even Peter Lynch, the great Peter Lynch, could beat the market for a long time. It started to wax and wane towards the end. The marketplace is wildly efficient. So what you're trying to position yourself as is someone who understands that, is then explaining to them as part of your plan and enlightening them so they're making informed decisions. So you're getting away from this resume-ish or this agency name crap that does not sell a property. The understanding of how our business works does. And it's way more effective than just agency. Okay? Period. Like, I can prove that in any marketplace, anywhere, anytime, by asking you to go in, print out the top producers at luxury, and show me what percentage of their deals are double-ended, meaning it was their marketing, their hustle that sold the property. It's a tiny number. Just, that's a fact of life. So you want to reposition yourself differently to say, I have a plan, and the plan starts with explaining to you how this works. I'm not saying that Sally doesn't have a great resume, but I'm entering into this marketplace with an alternative that keeps you, and here's where they like it, that educates you so that you can make an informed decision that is best for you, not defer blindly to the agent, me. Got it? Lisa, got it?
Yeah,
keeps going in and out.
Okay. Did you get it?
I can hardly hear you sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, something's going on with your mic.
Okay, did you get the gist of what I said?
Yes.
Okay, good. Then leave it at that. Next, Andrew. Guys, are you not hearing me?
Danny?
You guys not hearing me? Hello?
No, you're cutting out like 50, 60% of the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So did you get the gist of what I just said? Sorry, the people on Facebook got a
Yeah.
better ride than that. Yeah, go ahead, Andrew. Give me the context.
Yeah. My issue right now is I have a number of out-of-state buyers, and they are looking primarily for a vacation/investment home, so it won't be a primary residence. So it seems that their motivation is not all that high.
Okay, so if it's not, then it's not. Right? How about that? I mean, how about I just cut to the chase? On a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated are you to buy a property in Seattle?
Right, yeah, and I get responses like, well, it depends on the market, it depends on, well, I'm looking in another market as well, and whichever market comes up with the best property first, I'll move on that one first. So I'm really not getting, I'm not getting definitive, even on a scale, let alone a time frame.
Huh.
Andrew, I can speak to this. I mean, I deal with these type of people all the time because we service a secondary marketplace. So I'd say a good majority of our buyer clients are out of state, or at least, an hour or more away. So for us, it's just a matter of continuing, the touches. You will find that some of these out-of-state people will fall from the wayside and be like, nope, sorry, I ended up buying in Florida, or I ended up buying in California. So it's just a matter of, in essence, finding the ones that are real. And that it can take months, it can take sometimes years. I mean, for someone to buy in another state is even bigger of a decision than it is someone buying a primary residence. Yeah, right. Yeah, look, I'm going to second this, and I'm going to hit two beats on this. Number one, Patrick and Paul need to consider the lead sourcing as they are, right? And they do an awesome job at that, and they lean in. But more importantly, the three of you need to manage around, like Timmy Kerrigan's saying up here, is that worth your time? Because that's a big deal right now. We don't want to get sucked into, Andrew, thinking that may or may not be worth your time. I don't want you to just default to say every one of these needs to be brought to a conclusion. That might have been the conclusion right there, right? So I think you'd have to go back at them a little bit more aggressively logic and say, okay, if I can find you a house at this, and this is where I always teach you guys to default back to solds. Show them some solds and say, here are some investment properties that you're describing at this money that just went down in the last 30 days. Would you buy one if I can find it in the next 30 days or not? So, because you're going to have to, as a group, decide, as Laura and I are trying to decide, what is worth our time. It doesn't mean that you can't get money out of all of this for, a business, but it does mean you have to make a decision. Is this a lane we want to lightly travel in or heavily travel in? Because I know what you're doing, Andrew. You do work at this business. You're always here on these calls. You're always asking me questions. And my concern is I don't want to keep pounding on your skill set on something like that unless I'm clear it's worth your time. So the quick and dirty is put it on them a little bit more aggressively. Don't allow them. It was like last week when Dave in Canada, we were listening to his call. It was too nebulous. And what he found out was that ultimately she had another agent and he really had no chance. And she was just jerking him around, wasting his time. People will waste your time if you allow them to. In other words, people will treat you the way that you allow them to treat you, right? So I think you have to go in there and say, look, I don't want to waste your time or mine, so let me just cut to the chase. If I could find you a house like these that sold here in the next 30 to 60 days, would you buy it? Yes or no? Period.
Okay.
Yep, that makes sense?
Yeah, it does.
And Andrew, you're like Dave. You have a nice way about you. You have a nice pace to you, but do not let them waste your time, right? Don't let them. And it's not, I get what you're doing. A lot of the team members are trying to please the team leader by going above and even beyond and beyond with these leads. Don't go back to them and say, what would you do, Patrick, with this? Okay? Here's what I got. Right? And bring it to me like you did today. And that's why I can't do is saying, where are you people? Like, this is a really good question. Really good. Like, where are more questions like this from these, team leaders? Let me see. Timmy says, if you're too aggressive, they might leave, right? But rather take that risk than a foggy motivation. Yeah, man, for sure. Foggy motivation. Laura and I, boom. Right? 2 in the back of the head like Fredo, right? Or 1. All right.
Yeah, the problem is what, it seems like I get to that point where I'm going to myself, maybe it's not worth my time, and they'll come back with something like today. He said, I've got an out of state in Oklahoma, and he said, that time frame. I don't know, the market growth in Seattle is scaring me. So he's really showing hesitancy, and then he says, but what do you think about this property that he found online? And it's like, oh. Yeah,
but hold on. See, that's bad. But hold on, dude.
He's throwing me something.
Yeah, no, he's not. He's teasing. He's playing with you like it's like a cat and mouse. Yeah, you are the ball of yarn. Trust me, you're the ball of yarn. Like, don't let him do that to you. I mean, I don't mean to hurt the guy, but that's crap. Right? That's crap. And I think you can stop that. By the way, you started earlier saying, look, I'll give you all my time. I say this to my coaching clients. I will meet you on the phone at 3 a.m. if I think you are crying in your soup and desperate for my advice. Okay? As long as I know you're in, I'm in. But the minute I think you're, like Tim just said a great word, foggy, and you're dinging around, look, dude, take that nonsense somewhere else. Look, I love you, but you're getting a boot in the ass off of my dock at that point in time. It's just, you're wasting my time, and I love my time because I have a family, I have my friends, I have my own business associates, and I'd rather give them 110% of my love, time, and care than I would waste my time. Right? So you have to be militant about that management of your time. Now, that doesn't mean my advice is to be overly, weirdly aggressive and obnoxious. It's not what I'm saying. We started this with a whole different tone about nurturing. You can be an extreme nurturer, but you can also cut to the chase. I don't think people think it's like 2 extremes. It's not. It's a balance of this is what we have here. Here's what it's selling for. And here's what I think it could rent for. Okay? Is that something you would buy in the next 60 to 90 days if I could put it in front of you? Would you get on a plane and come see it? Otherwise, punt. But I also would say this, and this is for your team leader and his general manager. If this is the type of business that we're spending a lot of time on, like Gail and I were talking earlier, it's time to reconsider other ways to do business. Not the least of which is borrowing open houses whenever possible from a FSBO, from an expired, from another agent, another agency, anything. It's far better to get in front of real buyers who are running around in their cars or walking around in a city looking at properties. They are out there. I'm closing 2 of them right now as we speak. So they are there, and I keep saying it week after week. So be careful.
I totally agree with that. I've got 2 of those myself.
Awesome. Wonderful. See, there's my point. More of those, right? Which means what?
Right.
Spend more time hustling listings in addition to what you're already doing. Ask Paul and Patrick, where else could you go to get listings? You're far better off to spend that kind of time on the phone pursuing a sales opportunity with a listing that you know is physically sitting there and is going to be listed at some point. You're far better off there than some nebulous guy from, Boston. You know how we are, right?
Yeah.
All right, brother. Good job.
Okay.
Got to call it here. We're OT today because
you.
we had some good questions. You're welcome. And thank you, Lisa, too, for the late call there. And everybody else that participated. Nurture them to death. It's worth it. See you next time, okay? Good work, everybody.
Thanks, Danny.
You bet.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. You're welcome.
Thanks, Danny.
You're welcome.